again, before entering the structure of the mind, let's once again review very clearly, because this is a necessary requirement always. Okay? So, body, mind are not two separate things. The body is the gross physical form. The mind is the subtle, more ethereal form of the same phenomenon. Okay? Animals have to think their way through life. They think with their entire body. They sniff, they smell, they look, they chase, they look, right? They see a dog or a cat or a lion or a cockroach or whatever it is. It's functioning as an organic unity, fully engaged in what's happening, and trying to find the way to get to the high point or catch the prey or run away from or whatever. And there is a continuous thinking in action. The body is thinking its way, feeling and thinking its way. Right? What it's not doing is accumulating thoughts, ideas, values, beliefs, or necessary accumulating, keeping a remembrance of what's happening. It's just simply in the moment, learning to the best of its capacity, sensing and feeling its way to the best of its capacity. In order to do that, it has to have a sense of self. All life, for the past 800 million years since sex evolved, beforehand, reproduction was asexual. Bacteria, algae simply grow, divide, grow, divide, grow, divide. And I'm not sure an algae needs to know if what's next to it is another algae or not. It's just an algae, right? It just needs to know where light is, and maybe just randomly find itself where light is. Right? But if life gets more complex, an organism needs to be able to identify itself from others, because others will be food or mate or part of their herd, part of their gang, part of their tribe, part of their family. Yeah? That makes sense? So they have to create a sense of self. The body has a sense of self. And I'm going to call the sense of self a healthy ego, a healthy identification. Yeah? And you only need it when there are other selves to consider. Because if you are alone on an island, with everything that you needed was available, there was fresh water and food and shelter and everything you could do, would you need a name? Would you need much language? If only two of us were on an island, would we need names? Would you need a name for your friend on the island? Or would it be clear that when you're talking to him or her that you are talking to them? Let's say the three of us are alone on this island. Now, there might be a need for a name, right? Because I might be looking for you, or I might be looking for you, right? And I want to do something specifically with you, and you're going to do something else, so I'm going to say, hey, Chris, let's go catch some fish, right? Whatever we're going to do, right? Simple like that, right? So our capacity, our need for identifying ourselves and others grows with the complexity of our environment and with our lifestyles and our species and everything that we're doing. Does that make sense? So, a healthy way of looking at this, or a similar way of looking at this, is that when I want to go swimming on this beach, I put on my swim trunks. And I am now Raphael the swimmer. When I want to go to the bank, I don't go in my swim trunks. If I need to go to the temple, I don't go in my swim trunks. Right? Or necessarily in the same clothes that I used to go to the bank on the business meeting. I wear other clothes, right? Whatever it is I'm doing. So I'm putting on a personality. I'm going to identify myself in a way that allows you to identify me as well. Because it's easier that way. But then when I come home, I'm going to take all of that off and I'm going to go back into my comfortable sitting at home. Right? So you can put on a personality, a face, a persona, a mask to go out into the world. what you want to avoid doing is getting stuck in believing that you are that personality. This is what happens to us. We're taught to become identified to our thoughts, ideas, values, beliefs, stories, and these are just masks. They're just... So, a healthy body has the capacity to generate and create personalities and then drop them. It doesn't need to be stuck in any personality. So, the requirements for being able to do that easily and effortlessly is first have a healthy body that's functioning at peak performance. It's breathing properly, hydrating properly, eating what it needs, learning. It just ate a lunch that maybe it's okay. Next time it'll go eat somewhere where it gives it what you get what you need. Right? Then emotional freedom, emotional range. You need to have full range of your emotions, which means you need to have looked at, experienced, tasted, smelled, totally got into all of your different emotions fully, full dynamic range with full awareness. Cool. You want to come here for a second? Okay. Okay, let's make a movie.
What?
The movie is, show me your monster.
Let's keep a bite too.
Get it?
Yeah.
Right. Let's do that.
No.
Show me your worst, most angriest, most monster of all monsters.
Monster?
The monster of all the monsters. It's scary monster. Doesn't hold back. Right? You even get a little startled by it. She's not afraid to be fierce. But it took a little bit of work to get to that point. At first she was repressed, afraid, didn't know how to respond. Now it's just a joke, it's a game. Right? We see if we can catch each other and scare each other. She always wants to watch movies with monsters, and we live in a world where there's lots of monsters, so why not accept them and learn what kind of monsters there are. Right? And just play with them, be playful. She's full on, she's roaring. Now, when she first arrived, we sent her to a school here, kind of a like a primary school, kindergarten, extended school type of thing. And there was a little boy that used to pick on her and be a little rough with her. She would avoid him. She was a little bit afraid of him. And slowly, she became more confident. And this boy no longer picks on her. She didn't have to do anything. She just had to be more confident. Right? And know that she has the freedom to be a monster if she needs to. That alone is enough to probably eliminate 99% of all the conflict you're going to have in your life. It's that sense of, I know I'm a monster, and I'll be as monster as I need to be. Right?
That frequency you're at.
It puts out a certain frequency. Yeah, there's something about this person that maybe you don't want to mess with them. There's some people that you look at them and you're like, I wouldn't mess with this person. And others you're like, oh, this person, let's go play a joke on this person. No, let's not joke with her. Right? So, she's still light and playful. She was all excited and she wanted to show you how she could rah, because it's fun for her. It's a game for her. That's fun for me too. And I just fully present with her, and she comes on with such intensity that it always catches you a little bit. There's no fear, but you catch the energy, right? There's a boom, you feel it. That thunder, lightning strike, you feel it. Right? So she's going to be encouraged to have access to her full dynamic range her entire life. And now she's learning how to relate to others without having to go 100%. To be able to, like in Tai Chi, when you practice changing your balance from your left foot to your right foot, right? And first it's 50-50, and then you try to go 49, 51, 48, 52, right? And then you get 100, 0, and then you shift your balance back. There's a dial. You have a dial for your intensity that you need to find. It's an inner gain switch. So that you can be full on, but silent. Like, pull yourself up, right? Just
From the inside.
from the inside, right? Flex your inner muscles, right? Prepare yourself. And other people will sense that because everybody can do it and everybody can feel it. Yeah. So you will discover that on your own. So once your body is in a space where it falls into chronic balance, chronically just finds itself balanced, and your emotions, the confusion starts to thin out because you start to clear out an anger, a sadness, a fear, and anxiety, right? You start clearing those out step by step. There's going to be moments of like clear sky, so to speak, clear emotional. The weather will be calm. And when the weather is calm, that's when you want to go look for whatever is yucky or stormy or hidden or repressed. You want to clear all of that out first. When you're feeling the happiest and the strongest, that's when you want to go in and find your yuckiest points. Because that's...
How long do you think it will take to get your body all up?
I don't know, up to you. It'll take whatever it takes. And each time it'll keep getting better. Right? So you have to feel your way through that. I have no idea. I'm not in your body. But I know that I could feel my way through. And keep fine-tuning it, keep improving it. Right? Emotionally, I know that certain things are going to come up about my childhood, about my parents, about my past, about whatever. And I'm going to clear a portion of it, and I'm going to feel really good. And then a day, a week, a month, a year, a decade later, it'll come up again. And I might think, oh, I thought I cleared that. But no, I just cleared one part of it. It's not clear yet, so I will work on it again. And an hour, a day, a minute, a week later, or whatever the situation is, it'll come up again. And I will clear it again. And I'll just keep doing it.
How do you clear it? Just by going...
By going into it, by writing it down, by feeling my way. Some things I will need to jump up and down and scream. Other things I'll just need to curl up into a little ball and feel whatever I need to feel. Other things I'll write down and burn or release, right? And I have to see what works. And just keep at it. Because that's just the way it is. Right? But you can get the emotions out of the way if you just focus on that. You make that your prime. If you can create a lifestyle where you have the time, the resources, that you can just create a bubble for yourself, a little nest, a little cocoon, right?
Yeah.
You can go in and you take care of your body. Then you start finding the emotions that are trapped, the sentiments, the memories, the little traumas, the bigger traumas, whatever they're, and you start just clearing them out. The idea is, let's say that we went up into the jungle back up here, and we wanted to clear out an area for growing flowers, right? Let's say we wanted to clear out maybe like 10 meter by 10 meter area, right? So we might start with a chainsaw, right? We might have a machete, an axe, we might even burn, move everything out. But we're not going to plant immediately, because we know that if we just let it rain a little bit, that there's some seeds, there's some root tips, there's some vegetative matter that's going to grow, and it's going to come back. So we're going to then let it grow a little bit until it's big enough that we can start pulling it out. We're going to clear it a second time, and then it's still not ready. The third time, the fourth time, eventually you'll have cleared it enough times that you can start planting whatever seeds of what you want to grow. Okay? And still some things will come up. So there's a high probability that you will clear 90% of all of your junk will clear out and it won't come back. Yeah. But 9% might come back over and over and over the next few years, and 1% might keep coming back over the next decade, and 0.1% might come up until your last moment. On your deathbed, you might need to resolve one more time the fact that you were slapped to get you to start breathing instead of just allowed to start breathing at your birth. That might be something you need to clear out with your last breath. Just, it would almost make sense. I probably will need to. Right? And it shouldn't be a surprise. In other words, you shouldn't. And even if you go to the even when you go to the extent of using medicines to clear yourself out, no matter how deep, how intense, how amazing your ayahuasca journey was, or whatever you did, you have to keep the possibility open that something it's connected to something else, and something else will trigger it, and it will come back. And mind will always want to come back. It's your awareness that will prevent it from growing. Okay? So you'll watch it, and you're watching it. Your eyes open and the lights on. Keep the mice out of your kitchen. The minute you look away, turn off the lights. The mice, the rats, the cockroaches, they start to come in and look for food. Right? So the minute your awareness goes out of the way, it's your awareness and your understanding that prevents mind and the roots of mind and the seeds of mind to come up. And that's if you're just in a bubble. And if you're out in thoughts, feelings, emotions, projections are everywhere. And they'll land on you, they'll grow on you, right? And it's your watching that will, in other words, no matter how much I keep clean this kitchen, there's going to be a cockroach from the neighbor that's going to come over and try to make a home here. If there isn't already a nest here, somebody else will try to come in. So that's going to happen for life. If you go isolate yourself and you go live in a hut in the Himalayas or in a cave somewhere for 40 years and you don't have a single thought, when you come back, guess what? They're all going to start growing immediately. There's no way out. It's just what happens. It's just the way it is. So why pretend they don't exist, or why be bothered by them? Just simply accept that there's going to be mosquitoes, and there's going to be thoughts, there's going to be rainstorms, everything's going to happen. And there's days when your body won't feel good because you'll have caught a cold, or right? Fungus is trying to eat your toes, or whatever's happening. And you have to deal with that. Right? So that's going to happen. That's a part of it. Right? Does that make sense? So, mind. Don't do anything to feed it. Be aware of what you're feeding your mind. Be aware of what you are putting into yourself, especially when you first wake up and when you're going to go to bed. Especially when you're low blood sugar or dehydrated, entering a slightly hypnotic state. Watching television, watching a movie. I remember being in a space in my life where I was feeling very strong, very healthy, very good, and started feeling heavier and heavier. Something was bothering me, and I kept getting deeper and deeper into heaviness. What's bothering me? And I suddenly recognized that every morning on the way to work, driving my car, I would listen to the news, and the news was always the same. Always these people fighting against those people, these people cheating these people murdering those people, this, right? Same nonsense. Over and over and over. So I chose to start turning it off. And as soon as I did, right, I started being buoyant again. Right? So I chose to start watching the news, reading the news, after lunch, after a good meal, nice coffee. Now, what's happening in the world?
I'm having the same with Facebook. Usually I just check when I wake up and just Facebook, Instagram, mail, WhatsApp, and everything going through it. It's like, it's too much for me. I just get annoyed.
Because it's just accumulating more content.
Yeah.
Mind is content. Right? So stop adding more content if you want to clear it. Later, when you're clear, there's a lot of content you can carry, so you can add content and delete it as needed. But for now, you want to put a little sign outside your shop saying closed away on vacation so that you can finish up your accounting, your inventory, your
Clothes
stocks.
for renovations.
Closed for renovations, exactly. You're closed for renovations, for spring cleaning, for inventory, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And then you have a clearance sale, getting rid of all of this nonsense. Who wants it? Right? Now, what will you find? Always has been, always will be. Number one, mind is always comprised of ideas, thoughts, beliefs, philosophies, projections, and identifications and attachments to things. That's number one. A thing can be a memory, a feeling, an experience, the song that you heard when you met, the person that you love, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Okay? Attachments to things. Identification to things. Your emotions, your sentiments, your body, the image that you have of yourself is a thing. You have created it. Something that has been created by you or somebody else is a thing. Okay? Does that make sense? That's number one. Always. You're always going to find that category of mind, of thoughts, of content. Attachments and identifications to beings. Beings are not created. Things that are created are things. We are human beings. We have not been created. There is no creator. This universe is not a thing. It is an emergent creation. It is self-sufficient all by itself. It just creates itself. Yeah? So even attachment to the idea that there is a creator, that's also part of attachment to a thing. But we are beings. So being attached to another being, creating a relationship, is also a problem of mind. It's a content thing. Being attached or identified to a being separates you from that being, because you only need to be attached to something that you are separate from. And there are lots of beings. There's lots of things and there's lots of beings. The mind will always go towards things, beings, and the third category, which is greater now than it ever has been, is random thoughts. Mind is a collection of random thoughts. Usually about attachments and identifications to things and beings. Right? So we're going to have hope, fears, desires, angers, emotionalities, sentiments, sentimentalities around things and beings and random stuff. That's where Facebook comes in. That's the greatest source of randomness that there is. Oh, and then this. Oh, and the cat did this. Oh, and that person did that. Right? And it's attractive. Right? Bright things, bright flashing lights and things are always attractive. Little random things. So the entire construct of your mind, which is not your mind, it's mind, is going to be layers and layers and webs of connections and attachments and entanglements and enmeshments. It's always around. Sorry. This time of year, these little guys come around. There's one that always comes to visit and flies around. And he goes off, and sometimes I accidentally catch them, and I have to be careful not to squash them because they're harmless. So, it's always going to be things, beings, and randomness. That's never changed. It won't change. Now, so all these things, what are they going to fall into? Categories about what? Well, you will find that you're going to have thoughts and attachments and ideas and philosophies and beliefs and desires and hopes and dreams about your body. As soon as you do that, you are now separating yourself from your body and you're creating a body image. So that's a category. Every thought is like pressing a button on a walkie-talkie. It's preventing you from being intuitive. So you're going to have thoughts, mentations, right? about your emotions? Well, once you know your body and you know how many toes you don't have to have thoughts about it, right? You can have thought about the fact you have to, then you go and you get the right disinfectant or the right medicine for it, you resolved it, and then you don't have to think about it. You will have thoughts about emotions that come up that you haven't resolved until you learn to, well, explore and know all your emotions, just like you know how many toes you have. And you no longer need to have thoughts about that. That clears out so much. You're going to have thoughts about your thoughts. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, clean thoughts, dirty thoughts. Right? You do, right? How do I know? I have X-ray vision and I can see into you. I've been spying on you your whole life. No, because that's what mind is. Okay? Right? Sex. There's going to be thoughts about sex and sexuality. And the entire field of sexuality is that which the mind creates and interprets to be sex. Your gender identification, your gender preferences, your sexual preferences, what you like, what you don't like, what's good for you, what's bad for you, what's dirty for you, what you wish somebody would do for you, what you don't want to do to anyone, what you really want to do to somebody else. All of these are all thoughts, imitations around sex. Relationships. Family, friends, lovers, people you hate, the people you love, all that kind of stuff. All of those are going to be mental projections as well. And you have all of these things. Don't you? Right. You don't have one of these? No, you have them, right? Of course. Well, we all do. And these are the thoughts that you're saying that you have over and over and over again. 90% of them is the same nonsense that you were not born with, because you were born without a single thought. Right? So relationships. And relationships are super tricky because they are attachments. These are, once again, things and relationships. Relationships are always to beings. Now, some people will create a relationship with their car, with their phone. Right? Now there's a company in Spain that is creating robotic sex dolls that are so good that they have opened up a brothel. A brothel with robot. Sex workers. That's all. So, and somebody somewhere is going to have. They talk. They do everything. They're robots. They're right. So, someone is going to establish a relationship with that at some point. This is how lost and sick we are with our capacity to confuse reality for projection.
Yeah.
Right.
Seek it outside ourselves.
And it's important to note that our only contact, these bodies, the only contact they have with existential reality around is via images. You do not have a direct contact with anything. You have sound images, you have sight and visual images, you have flavor, smell, touch, temperature, pressure, pleasure, pain, wetness, dryness, coolness, warmness, right? These are all different data files that are being somehow consolidated into an experience of reality. They're all images. There's no direct contact ever. Even when you touch somebody else, you're not actually physically touching that person. There's electron fields that don't allow you're not actually even touching at the atomic level. You're just coming within a proximity. And the feeling of hardness is like when you try to push two magnets with the same polarity together, they don't want to touch. Right? Those are atomic forces. However,
our body is the same.
Our body is the same. Yeah. And it has the most amazing, magical, mysterious capacity to turn all of that into an image of reality. And it has the capacity to then Photoshop that image. And that's what mind is. It's the photoshopping, the adding of, it's the augmented reality. AR is the big thing that's happening now. The capacity to wear glasses with computer chips and sensors that can make the flowers look brighter for you if you want to. Because people are bored with the mundane. People want to be able to sit at home and be in the front row seat of, I don't know, whoever, right? Madonna, or this basketball game, or this prize-winning fight, and they want to be able to see things through rose-colored lenses, and you can never be satisfied with the image that your mind projects for you because it's always unsatisfying. It is not the full experience. The full experience is rich and satisfying. The full experience occurs when your mind is off and you're receiving information. Once you master doing that, then you can actually stay present and think your way through it. Start adding things to it. Then you become very creative. But first, you have to just learn to be present without projecting anything. So that's the first step. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's going to be about your body, about your emotions, about your mind, about sex, about relationships, about family, right? About money. There's going to be a lot of thoughts about money,
Yes, I know.
about work, about survival, about needs, about wants, about desires, right? And the tools that you can use to obtain money is one of them. There's going to be questions, thoughts, ideas, philosophies, beliefs about spirituality, about life, the universe, and everything, about God or goddess or whatever. And all of those thoughts can be beautiful thoughts and beautiful beliefs. And yet, once again, you are pressing the button on your walkie-talkie and you're not receiving that which you are surrounded by. There's something about putting it down, all the thoughts, all the beliefs, and everything about your body, so you can see your body and feel it for what it is. Your emotions, so that you can experience them for what you are. Your mind, so you can see what it's capable of doing. The fact that we're capable of creating a 3D wraparound projection illusion, enhanced according to our desires around everything around us, so that this is the cup that whoever drank from, or this is good, or this is bad, or this person, or whatever, right? Or this is the love of your life, whatever you project around it, means that once you have this under control, when it's working for you, you can use it to be very creative. Because the only way I can create this is if I have the capacity to, on top of a bare hillside, which is just washed out dirt and rocks and rotting, falling apart bungalows, I can start adding layers and layers of color and shape and form and smells and movement and flavors and create something that I like. Right? Does that make sense? So I'm using mind, I'm creating a mind to do that. But I have cleared myself of the images I have of my body, of my emotions, of my own mind, of spirituality, of sex, of money, of family, of enlightenment, of death. These are all the territories. You're going to be always thinking about money, sex, love, death, family, friends, the past, the future, things. You're going to create attachments to things. You're going to create attachments and relationships to beings. And then there's Facebook and Twitter. And randomness and whatever, right? But these are going to be the general territories, the general dimensions that you're going to find of mind. And nothing about them is interesting or original compared to existential reality. Existential reality is what is available to you when you're not projecting on top. Reality is whatever affects you. But existential reality is that which exists when you're not there. The plants, the trees, the skies, all of that. All of that is part of existential reality. And none of it is interested or has any awareness of you or as a separate being or of your thoughts, your hopes, your desires. All of that is your stuff. So I like to think of mind in a couple different ways. At the very superficial level, I like to think of it like, here we are, and we've just ordered a giant multi-topping pizza. I pull out a slice, and each one of you pulls out a slice, and you have a slightly different combination of toppings on your slice of pizza because somebody threw pepperoni and mushrooms, this and that, right? And you've got a little more of these, and I've got a little more of those. But the crust is the same. The sauce is the same. The cheese is the same. Right? You just have slightly different toppings. So at the most superficial layer, it's like a pizza. You have your own unique personal stuff, but 90% of what you have, everybody else has too. This is that number of 90% of the thoughts that you're having. Well, they're not original to you. You ingrain them. You pick them up from your outside, and you accept them as truths, as important thoughts. You hold on. Some of them you don't even know the junk that you're holding in your head. And I had somebody visit. I won't give too much information because at some point these videos will be released, so I have to censor certain things out. But he's a relative, somewhat not a blood relative, but a political relative, through marriage and stuff like that. And he came to visit. I was in Chiang Mai, and he and his girlfriend came to visit us. And Tantra made a great meal, and there was all sorts of different foods, and one was a chicken dish. And this young man declared, "I don't eat chicken." I was like, really? Why? My grandfather never ate chicken, and I don't eat chicken. It's like, wow, you're an idiot. That's really stupid. I've never heard something that stupid in my life. Because his grandfather doesn't eat chicken, so he doesn't eat chicken. We have thoughts like that. Right? My family is Republicans or Democrats, or we're atheists, or we're Christians, or we're this or we're that, and so am I. Right? So you want to identify all of that. Now, the next thing to be aware of is that the pizza might be the common layer of the now. Right? What we've collected and accumulated over the last 30, 40 years, 50 years, pretty much constitutes this layer of crust. But I like to look at it also as a lasagna, where there's layers and layers and layers and layers, and they go back 10,000 years.
Yeah.
And I'd like to share with you what I see as the source of all of this. Where does this all come from? How does this all build? I witness how this is happening with Nampu. So I recognized this pattern many years before, and now I have a lovely child being to just witness and to study and to see how she does things. Right? How does she learn? So we humans have been around. Hominids have been around for at least 2 million years. And our cousins and tool using and language using relatives have been around for at least almost 2 million years also. Using tools 1.8 million years ago. Yeah. But it wasn't until the last ice age that certain parts of the world were forced into more extreme conditions. The tropics, the jungles, the Southeast Asia jungles, the Amazon jungle, Malaysia, Borneo, pretty much remained untouched in the last 100 million years. But in the last 40,000 years, we had a serious ice age that hit good solid parts of all the continents. And we were forced, as human groups, as human herds, to live in isolated areas. The walls reported to have been up to 1 or 2 or 3 kilometers high, separating this mountain range from this other mountain range. So somewhere in the area that we call Germany, there were a couple of valleys with a couple of tribes, and somewhere in the area we call Switzerland was another valley, and then somewhere in Spain, and somewhere in the UK, and areas of North America, and areas of Siberia, and China, and areas in South America. Groups of humans were isolated in very remote areas. And we had to learn how to survive and live and make it through very intense places and intense environments. Places where maybe the weather was too extreme and so strong that children and older folks had to stay behind, and the young, healthy, the 20-year-olds, the 15-year-olds, the 20-year-olds could go out and hunt and forage and gather food. And the children and the elderly, the 30, the 40, the 50-years-olds, that's about as old as we got back then, had to stay behind in shelters and caves and taking care of the children. Now, it's understood, it's believed that this model, Homo sapiens sapiens, has remained, for the most part, genetically unmodified, hasn't evolved in at least the last 40,000 years. 100,000 to 150,000 to 140,000 years is believed to be the evolutionary speciation of this so-called species. Right? That makes sense? So, the same organic unity, the same intelligence existed back then that exists now. So here we are, sitting in caves with children, right? Finding ways of domesticating animals, finding ways of gathering seeds and saving them, finding ways, needing to count and keep track of our supplies, of the weather, because in the jungles, there's always food, there's always water, right? There's never mountains of ice, but in other areas of the world, there's no food for months at a time. So we have to learn how to start counting. We have to learn how to start writing. We have to create a symbolic language where we can keep track of things, because we need to know how things happen over time. It's necessary, right? And we developed language. But our ancestors who developed, and all creatures have different ways of communicating, but they're all unconscious. So the very roots of our language evolved from unconscious human animals in the best possible way.
Wouldn't they have had in mind because they didn't have language?
They would have created mind. Well, in every tribe there's an alpha male. That's a mental construct, right? But that doesn't mean that it would have been an unhealthy mind. It would have been a healthy ego. A healthy sense of self. I'm the one that does this, you're the one that does that, you're the one that does that. Together, if we all work, if you're clear about what you do and you're clear about what you're good at and I'm clear about what I'm good at, we find a way to communicate it, we can work as a team. And we are the best at doing that. We can hunt, we can forage, we can build, we can create. We can do things as organized teams much better. So that means we need to develop a language that allows us to do that. And we need to find a way of creating a symbol that represents an experience of reality that we can all agree that we need water, agua, and somebody's going to go get it. Because somebody else needs fire, and somebody else needs to get the fire and the wood and something else, right? We're much more efficient when we work as teams, which means you need to know what you need to go get, and you need to know how much you're getting, and so do I, and so forth. Right? So somewhere along the line, people started developing language, written language skills. As soon as we start creating written language, there's a transition space in training the mind to read. Because a mind that is untrained to read will not learn how to read by itself. It needs to be trained. So how do we train children how to read? We create an alphabet. A, B, C, D, all the way to Z, or Gorgai, Korkai, Korkwa, Sara'a, Sarai, Asantai. Right? Then we take a picture of something that the child can easily identify. A is for apple. B is for boy. C is for cat. D is for dog. Right? And we have a big picture of an apple and a little A. It's for apple. And then hieroglyphics start that way, right? Images, pictorial languages. And then slowly we start eliminating the picture and making the letter more important. Eventually, you just see an A, B, C, or D, and you can start putting these letters together, and you can write the word boy, or cat, or that, or whatever you want. Does that make sense? But the learning process is to take a picture of something that is real, a symbol of something that is real, and attach a symbol that is abstract, use it to define that real world again. So language is always about reality. It is never reality. It always talks about. It's always defined about. And because it's created by a mind, a brain that compares and contrasts, and recognize this pattern, it must be dualistic. So every word in the dictionary is defined by its opposite. Good is defined by the absence of evil, or evil is defined by the absence of good. Black is compared to white, and then you can put all the other colors, but you got to start with black and white. Otherwise, how do you get all the 50 shades of gray? Right? Does that make sense? So, language is always about reality. It's the proverbial finger pointing to the moon. It's not the moon. Okay? And you need to know that it is, and you need to know that language evolved unconsciously from people who have been tricked, convinced, who have tricked themselves into believing that because it's written down in a book somewhere, or because somebody said it, that it's a truth. And it's not. It's always a picture of what was happening in that moment. It's not necessarily the actual. It's never the actual reality of what's happening in the moment. So if you have a set of rules or ideals or philosophies or beliefs about how you're supposed to live your life, they're always going to be off. And it doesn't matter if they're off by a millimeter or by a hair. They're always off. So it's of value to go back and remember every time you think about something, look at the language that you're using and how you're using it and why you're using it. Because the whole reading process works because you believe that that letter symbolizes a picture of something that's existential and real, like A is for apple. And then you write the constitution of your country, or the religious ideals or beliefs or values of your Bhagavad Gita or your Bible or whatever it is. And I have nothing against any of these books. I love books. I love language and words. But you have to understand the limitations of language. Language evolved and emerged from unconscious, unawakened to the higher intuition beings.
It's limited.
It's limited. However, it can be used in a way that allows for us to transcend that limitation. But before you can transcend that limitation, you have to experience it firsthand, that you have tricked yourself into believing that your thoughts are real, your values are authentic, that your beliefs are existential. And at some point you have to realize that that's not actually working the way it could be. So you can then start challenging it. But the ultimate challenge is going to be to look at the very root of your language and how you've learned and processed and convinced yourself that something is real because your grandfather didn't eat chicken, so you're not going to eat chicken. Or I'm a boy, or I'm a girl, or I'm a man, or a wife, or a husband, or this or that. Right? Because it's always a label created by a mind. Does that make sense? So it's easy to get lost. On top of that, a long time ago, people discovered something. They discovered that if you catch a baby tiger, or a baby deer, or a baby buffalo, you take a string, and you tie it, if it's a male, and you tie it around the testicles, and you tighten it, that they will get no blood flow, they'll dry up and they'll fall out. And that this animal will no longer be aggressive and it will be more easily domesticated. So this was done with humans for a long time, until somebody figured out that all you have to do is tell a child, shh, dirty, bad, naughty, guilty, yuck, yuck, don't do that, don't touch, don't think about that, don't do that, that's bad. That the child will create a separation. So what? Well, when this part, this other side of the spinal column reaches maturity and activates itself, it's the part that allows the body to function as an organic unity, powerful enough to shut off the mind and reset it. But if you implant in fears and guilt and shame around sex, and you create a sexuality, mental projection of what sex is, yes, then the energy that's supposed to go into this development that has the potential of liberating someone from their mental constructs goes back into and feeds the mental constructs. That mind becomes more powerful, more anchored, more cemented, but it never develops anymore because it's not supposed to develop beyond puberty. The mind that you receive as a child needs to end at puberty. Aboriginal cultures for millions of years, all around the world, when a child reaches puberty, they are tested by being sent out into the wild with what they know, and if they live and survive, they come back and they're integrated adult members of the tribe. And if they don't, it's okay, there's more. It's a big deal. There's more. There's always more. You can always make more, right? And living in abundance, what's the big deal, right? Now, in certain areas, climate, the world was so extreme that they decided to test the children for their integrity and for their strength earlier. So I have heard that in Tibet, the babies are dipped in ice water like 9 times or something like that, and the ones that live are raised, but they're not given a name until they reach age 4 or 5, at which point they are now strong enough and healthy enough to be integrated, and you might as well give them a name, and now you can, okay, this is Nampu, she's 6, she's survived all this shit, and now she has the potential of one day. But when she reaches puberty, we're going to send her out into the wild with an eagle or whatever she can, right? She's going to figure it out. Hunt, start a fire, and do whatever she wants to do. Right? Does that make sense? And that process of having to rely 100% on yourself out in the wild, once you're sexually mature, is enough to allow for the transformation from a child to an adult. We didn't do that. We had more and more layers of content. We tell stories about life and love and God and sex and this and that, and we fill the child's head with nonsense. And then we even tell them that they're sexually liberated when they're not. And the next thing you know, you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, or 100, and you're holding on to the same mind that you imprinted unconsciously as a child, and all the ideas, all the values, all the contradictions you accept as being real. So real that in some cultures, well, people will kill you if you say something against the book they believe in. Right? It is that extreme, right? So, how are you attached and identified into believing that what is in your mind is the reality, the existential reality, what you need to navigate and feel your way through existential reality here and now today is an important consideration. Because every time you read something, your brain is associating those words and those letters and those meanings to something that it learned reality, because a child cannot tell the difference between reality and projection. A child has a dream that it lost its toy and it wakes up crying because I lost my toy. No, you didn't. It was a bad dream. No, it was real. I was there. It's a dream. And what if there's different layers of dreaming? What if there's layers of consciousness that are unconscious to themselves? For example, what if you are unconscious, asleep, right? And you have no awareness that you're asleep. Because you're asleep. But somebody whispers your name, and you wake up. Somebody whispers somebody else's name, you don't wake up. There is an unconscious awareness that is listening for your name, right? How is it that she's exhausted, she can barely keep her eyes open, she falls asleep, she lives near a train station, the train goes by, she doesn't wake up, her baby hiccups in the middle of night when she wakes up. Right? So there are different layers of awareness which function at different levels. And our bodies can be asleep and unconscious, and we can have dreams within that layer of asleep and unconscious. And we can believe that that's real while it's happening. As a matter of fact, go to any movie theater and watch any movie in big widescreen and surround sound. And isn't it true that there are moments when your body actually believes and feels that what is happening is real? Because when the monster jumps out of the back seat, you jump out of your seat. Right? And when something funny happens, you laugh. And when something sad happens, you cry. Right? And the entire porn industry functions on the fact that people can look at a picture and become sexually aroused. But it's just a picture. There's nobody in front of you. Why are you getting sexually aroused if there's nobody in front of you that is healthy and interesting and sexy and fun? That energy's been diverted, distracted, moved, and put into amplifying your mind. Right? Amplifying the projections of your mind. Right? Does that make sense? So it's important to be aware of that, because you need to know what your triggers are to make you think that whatever you're experiencing is actually existentially real, as opposed to a real dream.
But then nothing is really real.
Reality is what it is. There's an existential reality, and you are navigating and feeling your way through images. And you wish to have the least distorted, the least modified, the clearest images of reality, so that you can then choose to find a place to sit and find ways of creatively distorting it to your advantage. Like I can take trees, and I can take sand and cement, and I can distort it to build a house. But I'm starting with existential materials. Right? So it's very important to understand that because of the way our bodies are wired, how they function, that we are constantly surrounded by imagery. And we need to know whether we are projecting that imagery, how much of that we're projecting, and how much of that we're actually receiving. And it's important to know that when you are thinking, fearing, desiring, hoping, dreaming about your past or your future, or even dreaming or hoping, believing that you're here in the now, you're in projection mode and you're not actually receiving existential reality. You're missing. Wait, so how do I get from here to there without dying? Well, there is a mechanism that's built into your body that allows you, for moments, for a split second, to stop projecting, to take your finger off the talk button and receive a brief glimpse of the imagery around you. That happens at the top of every breath and at the bottom of every breath. So you can drive home after work, arrive home, and not remember how you got home. But somehow you navigated through the streets, you stopped at all the red lights, you went when the light went green, you almost hit someone and moved out of the way without even knowing how you steered out of the way, because that's happened, right? You almost hit someone, but somehow you moved out of the way. And you're like, I didn't see that, but I got out of the way. Right? Because you have a secondary visual system that clicks in at the top of every breath every few seconds. If you're driving too fast, somebody can run in front of you faster than you can see the image. If you're drunk, then your reaction time, your response time will be too slow, so you might still hit something. But there's a certain range of velocity that you can navigate through a reality where your unconscious mechanisms for viewing reality will be available to you. Now, dreaming can be nicely defined as thinking with images. When you go to bed at night, take a nap, and you dream, all sorts of imagery comes up. And it's how your mind thinks with images. Thinking, the way we do it, when we're literate, can be nicely defined as dreaming with words. Because you'll have an image of something, you'll see a word, or you'll hear a sound, which will remind you of a picture, which will remind you of something your mother said, which will then take you to something you wish you had, right? And suddenly, you're daydreaming away. What if the consensual reality that we're creating around us is a consensual waking dream that we're all projecting together because we are Manchester United, or we are the Spanish Inquisition, or we are Al Qaeda, or whoever, it doesn't really matter, or I am Thai, or I am Peruvian. We create these identifications around words, we define things, and we have identifications, for example, to our nation. But what is an identification? How do you define what your nation is? Peru defines itself by not being Ecuador, Chile, Colombia, Paraguay, or Brazil. We're not them, we're us. Okay? Don't you define yourself by who you are not, by your neighbors that you are not? Right? Does not make you what you are, but we're not them. We're us. Right? And people go to war over shit like that. So that you must actually believe somewhere in your mind, you must believe that it's real enough to go and hurt somebody else or hurt yourself over it, right? So that's how tricky it can be. Now, there's a higher level of awareness that's available to you when you're not projecting. If you're a mature adult with a fully functioning body, with full vision and hearing, that awareness is the same awareness that wakes you up when somebody whispers your name.
Without button.
With no pressing the talk button. But that awareness hasn't been awakened yet, or it's in the process of awakening. In order for that awareness to awaken, you need a language that's complex enough to describe certain things. For example, if you don't have a mirror, if you haven't culturally developed a mirror so that you can see a reflection in the water, but if you don't actually go out of your way to build and design and engineer a mirror, you never really get to study your reflection and see that things are kind of mirror opposite and reflected. Right? You never learn how to put on makeup and stuff like that, right? If you don't have words to describe certain subtle differences in how your mind, how you are, how you operate, and how you think, you won't figure things out. For example, in Spanish, which is my first language, Spanish and French are my first two languages, in Spanish, there's no word to distinguish between consciousness and a conscience. Having conscience and having consciousness. Being conscious. And a consciousness, having a conscience, is sort of like the ego of the ego. It's a little built-in, self-evaluating personality that accepts and believes as a child that this is good or this is bad, that you've been naughty or you've been nice. And it controls your behaviors. It's an external that somebody figured out. And isn't it interesting that in these cultures, certain religions have more power than in other religions? Because if you can't tell the difference between your conscience, and if you are born in a Judeo-Christian context, you have a conscience somewhere, the construct that it is versus just being conscious, acting from full consciousness, and instead of having a conscience that dictates to you what is moral, amoral, or immoral, you can just function in the moment on what is correct and appropriate based on the circumstances right here, right now. Right? So you're going to find that there are branches of things like morality and values of right, goodness, and good and bad that are going to be part of the construct of your mind. And it's all just accumulations of words, stories, ideas that you imprinted as a child when you had no
Does it
choice
also
but to
mean that
believe.
Spanish then is not that complex because there are a lot of words, I speak Spanish as well. There are a lot of words in Spanish or in Dutch and in English that are not existent in Spanish.
That's right. That's right. So there's some things, some experiences that you can have in Spanish that you cannot have in French or English or Dutch. There's some experiences you can have in English that you can't have in Spanish. The awakening, to be able to have your own awakening experience, you need to know the difference between a conscience and a conscious. You have to find your conscience, isolate it and separate it as a construct from consciousness. Because the conscience is a mind construct. Consciousness is beyond mind. You have to find the consciousness that is beyond your mind. You have a mental consciousness. People, it's funny, you go around, you tell people you need to have a higher, I'm conscious. Well, your mind is conscious of itself. Yes, that's it. Well, what about the consciousness that's beyond mind? It's only available to you when mind is off and you're alert and awake and aware. No, I don't need that. No, that doesn't exist. No, that's not possible. I've had people storm out of here saying, that's not possible.
Really?
God created the Word. The Word is the first thing. Without Word, without mind, there's nothing. Really? Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. I can have this conversation with you. If your belief system paints a picture of reality that's so real that you accept it, so you're going to have to challenge all of your constructs, values, and all of your beliefs. That's why it's really nice to first get your body healthy and strong, and relaxed, and well-tuned, and get your emotions cleared out because at least you have an internal history of what's going on within you, and then you can start jumping into the world of all of your mental constructs that you inherited from your culture, from your society, from languages that go back thousands of years, plus whatever you got from your family, plus whatever you have given yourself through your choices, your hobbies, the books you read, the movies you watch, the people you spend time with. Right? Does that make sense? These are all layers of mind. And you are capable of being thinking, watching your thoughts go by, feeling, watching your feelings go by, fully functioning as an intuitive, integrated, organic unity, and watching that. And there's something to be said about being able to function from all those levels at once. Where there is a witnessing of a healthy body functioning as an integrated unity, when it thinks when it needs to think, and it feels when it needs to feel, and it senses what it needs to sense. And all of that gets integrated into one greater image that results in functioning from a state that is best described as self-unguided, choiceless awareness. Self-unguided, choiceless awareness. You do it every night, or almost every night, maybe without knowing it. Have you ever awakened in the middle of the night and you need to go pee?
Twice a night.
Twice a night, great. And so when you do it twice a night, watch yourself. I bet you then you just wake up, you move the blankets, and you walk your way, and you turn on the light or you don't turn on the light, and then you pee, and then you wash your hands or you don't wash it. Whatever you do, right? You flush, you don't flush, whatever it is, you go back to bed and you go back to sleep. And you don't have to think about it. Do you? You just do it. But you're there, right? Like you know you're doing it. But you don't have to think about it. And you don't try to walk through the wall. And you don't check your Facebook. You just simply go and do what you got to do, and then you come back, right? And wherever you are, if there's a doorway and it's well illuminated, and you need to walk through it, you simply walk towards it and through it, and you never think about trying to walk through the wall. Do you?
Oh, well, it was once the door was open, but like this, and I was
And then you boom. Yeah, that's happened to me too. But that only happens once or twice.
Yeah.
Just never do that again. So now you walk like this. you're functioning from a state of you're not. There's no choice. You're not deciding whether you're going to walk through the doorway or not. You're just simply walking through the doorway. You're not thinking about whether you're going to wait to pee later or you're going to pee now or how much you're going to pee. You just simply get up and you go pee and then you come back, get back to bed, and you go back to sleep. Okay? Now, so you can function. Your entire life can function from that state, and it's quite delightful and quite delicious. And the more you do it, in larger, more complex environments, the better you get at it. And there comes a day when you just, wherever you go, you're just there. You just see what's there.